An unforgettable Norse warrior, the fearsome raider, the merciless foe, the ale-swilling pagan who curiously laughed in the face of death is no one other than Ragnarok Lothbrok. He was a legend of the immortal Viking, and most of his acts seem like they've been plucked from a Hollywood blockbuster. This famous immortal Viking was a king of Denmark and Sweden. He came from a place where only strong people were recognized. However, he was obviously one of them. Be it his personal life or his roles during wartime or fighting with giant snakes, Ragnar Lothbrok has amazingly left his marks on the world, and still, he's a legend remembered by most of us. His roots in European literature are still intact. However, some facts about Ragnar are still ambiguous. One of the most curious questions about Ragnar Lothbrok is, how did his death turn out? How many sons did Ragnar have? And many such exciting questions make us more curious to know about the legend Ragnar Lothbrok. So let's take a deeper dive to know some fascinating facts about European folklore revolving around Ragnar Lothbrok. The legend of the European era is said to be born somewhere around the 19th century, and some of its historically famous incidents were noted in the saga of Ragnarok Lothbrok, which basically means hairy trousers. In reality, this legend of Vikings were trousers that were made of boiled wolfskin and tar, which made them thick and resistant. European legend was crucial personnel and younglings, an ancient noble lineage of Swedish and Norwegian kings. From the beliefs of the past, it was found that these people were known as descendants of the god of the Nordic pantheon. However, there's not much evidence about the European legend's childhood, but there are some instances from the sources which revealed its adulthood and family. Once Ragnar Lothbrok was heading to Norway, where he was planning to revenge for the death of his grandfather in a war against Fro, who was a self-proclaimed Swedish king. The Swedish king was disliked by most of the women residing in that particular region. So to protect themselves against the self-proclaimed king of group of women approached by Ragnar's camp, now both a strong army of men and a group of women approached the self-proclaimed king and attacked them. Here's a twist in the story of a woman warrior named Lagertha, who was known for her extraordinary skill set and courage. She was adored by an entire army, and also by Ragnar because of her skills and also for her beauty. Finally, with the combined hard work by both the men and women's army, they earned a victory against the self-proclaimed Swedish king. All thanks to Lagertha and her courage, which helped them to win the war against Fro. Ragnar was highly impressed by her beauty, assailant, and courageous nature. However, Lagertha was not interested in any man, not even a warrior, Ragnar, but once Lagertha brought a wild bear and hound outside her house so as to protect herself from unwanted admirers. Silly. But we already know Ragnar was instantly infatuated with Lagertha, so to prove himself worthy of her, Ragnar went to a place where she resided and fought with bear and hound. He amazingly shot the bear and choked the hound, which helped him clearly resemble his worthiness to Lagertha. Finally, after all the fickleness, Ragnar and Lagertha married and had two little daughters whose names were not found in the sources. However, their son Fridleif was mentioned several times in the historic poem's tales. They lived a happy and joyous life for a couple of years with their children. But suddenly, Ragnar was not interested in Lagertha and wanted to marry Thora, a daughter of King Harald. At the moment he left Lagertha, he shifted to Denmark, where he had to face a civil war. The war was intense, so to provide a helping hand, he asked Norway to help him. However, what happened after that was not revealed. But yes, as Lagertha still loved him, she came with 120 massive ships entirely filled with warriors to help Ragnar. Lagertha smartly attacked the rivals from the backside and helped Ragnar earn a second victory against the foes. Now jumping back to Ragnar's personal life when he planned to marry Thora. To marry Thora was not easy for Ragnar. This time also, he was to face the challenging task of killing the vipers, scorching the countryside with their poisonous breath. This was a challenging task proclaimed by King Harald to marry his daughter. But we know Ragnar was not the one who gave up on things he desired for. So Ragnar dressed up, which was entirely stuffed with hair, which made the dress less penetrable but more protective. He further soaked the entire dress and allowed it to be frozen for some time to make it sustainable for the challenge. Once the dress was ready, Ragnar further found the serpents and managed to kill them with a spear. King Harald was surprised by Ragnar's act, and he immediately laughed out loud at Ragnar and named him Lothbrok. Accepting such insane challenges and successfully accomplishing them made it possible for Ragnar to marry Thor finally. Both of them shared an amazing bond, and after a couple of years, both were parents of three sons, Erik Ragnarsson, Halfdan Ragnarsson, and Agnar Ragnarsson. The family tree of Ragnar is quite difficult to understand, as apart from the two wives we already discussed. Ragnar married again to Aslog Kraka Sigurdsdottir of Denmark. Ragnar was mesmerized by her beauty, as for the first time when Aslog came in front of Ragnar, she was wrapped in a net biting an onion and a dog accompanying her. Her captivating look and body could not stop Ragnar, but he proposed to Aslog to marry him. But guess what? Aslog denied Ragnar's proposal for once. However, after Ragnar completed his mission, he was approached by a beautiful Aslog, as until then she already knew what was Ragnar planning. After a moment, Aslog was bound to share her family background from which it came. Aslog proclaimed she was the daughter of the legendary King Sigurd, who was successful in slaying the dragon Fafnir. She disclosed the fact that she will soon be giving birth to a son whose eye will have the image of a serpent. With a strengthening bond between Ragnar and Aslog, she gave birth to 5 sons named Sigurd, Bjorn, Ivar, Ragnvald and Ragnarsson, and Halfdan Ragnarsson. However, there were 3 daughters as well of Ragnar and Aslog named Ragnhildir, Ragnarsdottir, Olaf, and Ube. Being a father of so many kids is pretty challenging, but the fact here is most of Lothbrok's sons have pitched their extraordinary image in history. There's some evidence that resembles how amazing historical figures were Lothbrok's sons. Let's take the example of Bjorn, who was a well-known and skillful naval commander. He was exceptionally known for raiding the area around Paris in 857–59. The next legends of Vikings were Ivar the Boneless and Ube, who were active leaders in the Great Heathen Army. However, it's not that all of them were historical figures, but some of them, like Halfdan Ragnarsson, were genuine figures. What are some of the fascinating facts about Ragnar? Ragnar is known to spend most of his life as a pirate and raider, traveling from one country to another and eventually invading them and acquiring them with his strength and fearless attitude. If not, Ragnar in return would accept a gigantic payment to leave his victims alone. However, he did not stop there. He would approach those victims again and would demand more riches in exchange for leaving. Being a vital personnel in Vikings, he was also known for following blitzkrieg-like tactics. Now, what are these blitzkrieg-like tactics? Basically, this technique is used by almost every Viking where they plan to terrorize, demoralize, and overwhelm their opponents even before they can gather sufficient and strong enough force to oppose them. One interesting fact about Ragnar is that he used to only fight when the odds were in his favor. The next curious fact about Ragnar is his death. To date, there is no clear idea of how Ragnar faced a deathbed. However, some sources like Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus Gesta Danorum exclaim that he already did endless raids in the northwest of England. With repetitive raids and frequent raids, Ragnar was finally captured by Anglo-Saxon king Aella of Northumbria and was eventually thrown into a snake pit to die. During these stressful and struggling days, Ragnar exclaimed how the little piglets would grunt if they knew how the old boar suffered. He blamed his sons for putting him in such a mess. Also, Ragnar was recalling his victories and thinking of the scenario after the death of a Viking warrior. But is this true? Well, some of the sources like Icelandic work that's Ragnar's Saga, Lubrakar, and Pater of Ragnarssonum believe this is how Ragnar ended up on a deathbed. But some other people believe Ragnar died somewhere between 852 to 856 during a storm on one of his voyages along the Irish Sea. The stories and views of these fearless Viking warriors are endless. So what are your thoughts on Ragnar's life story filled with fickleness? What could be the real reason for the death of a warrior? Do let us know your views in the comments below. That said, if you enjoyed watching an interesting life tale of Ragnar, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more such exciting content. See you in the following video.